Howdy y'all, this is Dwight and welcome back to part 2 of my series of making a slip joint pocket knife without a pattern. Well, here's where we left off. Got our holes drilled and our liners basically shaped. So now I'm going to go on to seeing about cutting out the blade and the back spring. So I'm going to be using a chunk of CPM 154. It's the main thing I use anymore. So I'm fairly used to it. So, how are we going to go about doing this? Well, pretty simple for me. I know I want my blade thickness basically same thickness as my liner. I don't want it fatter and I don't want it skinnier, because I want, whenever you look down it, I want the blade to pretty well flow with the liner, generally speaking. Obviously some blade types flow a little better, and handle shapes of course. So also know that I don't want it any longer than my hole on the butt end of the knife. So all I'm going to do, trace along the bottom and about right here, basically make a square, because that gives me room. Pivot hole be right there, got plenty on this end, and it's short enough to where I ain't gonna be wasting a bunch of material. Okay, now how about the back spring? I'll probably end up I'm gonna cut this out first, because depending on how this chunk lies, I might can use part of this for my back spring. Okay, that's the chunk we got left. This is the chunk that we just took off. Just looks exactly like a blade, don't you think? But the main thing, it basically, width-wise, covers all the liner. So we have plenty of meat there to work with. Okay, now for the back spring. Again, put our liner on, spine down, because our pivot is offset to the top just a little bit. If we bring this down here and look at it from the back side, this is plenty wide enough for the spring width to go down along through there. So, of course I cut it at a slant right here. This was sitting in there like this, so I can see through that hole whenever I start getting on material. And the length of what we have is plenty long enough, because the end of the back spring is probably going to meet the spine of the blade, approximately right in that area right there. So all I'm going to do is mark a little circle in there to make sure I'm giving myself enough meat right here. That's cutting a tiny bit close, but I can look through here. Since I think it's cutting a little close, I'll move it on down just a touch. Hold that. Don't need to be perfect, just a line. I just need to cut right up through there now. So once I have this cut out, well, and this is what our back spring looks like. Once again, just like a back spring, don't it? Okay, next thing I'm going to do is punch holes in these. So I'm going to lay my liner on here. To give myself plenty of room, I'm actually going to come up here really close to the edge of where I cut. Got my trusty 1-2-3 block. I'm just going to center punch right through my end hole there. There we go. That's actually right past. That's kind of hard to see. It's right past where I circled it. So I'm nice and safe for that one. And now, for the blade. Okay, this here's going to be the spine. This is actually the edge of the metal. I think it'd be fine, but I prefer that not to be the cutting edge. So I'm kind of lining that up with a spine, and I'm going to draw a circle with my scribe pen, and I'm going to bring it back around, line that up, just give or take. Okay, I still have plenty of length. Let's go to the half stop position. Line it up reasonably close. I'm not looking exact, but reasonably. Okay. And I have plenty of meat down here at the spine between where the half stop's going to be. So just double checking if I would center punch right there, that's a safe spot for that. So let's come back to the open position. See what I mean? Keeping it the same width as the liners. Now granted, I didn't give myself a whole lot of room for error the way I cut this out, but that's okay. I like that spot. So, since I have it circled, I will just eyeball it without using the liner. Center punch. Center of that circle. Okay, as you can see, we've got the hole drilled and the back spring and the pivot hole in the blade. Next, I'm going to do a quick look here, see how we're oriented to the liner here. Okay, you probably can't see, well yeah, you probably can. My real quick hurried scribe line there. I cut a little longer, but looking at the end hole orientation, I'm going to need to make this a bit shorter. And if we're looking at our spine, that will dictate where the point needs to be. Do we need to have a large curve with a on the spine with a subtle curve on the bottom, or do we do a large curve and get the point farther up, which means the blade settles down in between the liners? So if we're looking down here, we ain't got no room for nail nick, long pull, or nothing like that if we settle it too far down. So I'm just going to be looking right here in the closed position to see approximately how I'd like it to sit. Take a gander on this side and see approximately where it would be hitting the back spring. That's pretty tight. Bring it up a little bit more. See, we would be coming up out of it about right there. How would that look? That should be a decent amount of room. Of course, see, actually, let's do this real quick. Where the sharpening tool going to be? Here, okay. How much? I want to come out just a little more. Okay, that right there is approximately where the blade bevel would start if I put the sharpening tool about right here. So, let me scribe that in. See, there's several things to consider doing this. So when we come down in, this might come up a little bit. Okay, but I'll have to say this is kind of fun just doing this on the fly. So I want my tip to be approximately right in here. So we'll be doing something kind of like that. Okay, I got basic shapes done, though I still haven't did anything on the Tang area. And I got me a curve on the inside of the back spring. So let's see how we have done so far in relation with our liner material. Throw pins through them real quick. Okay, first thing I see right off is I did misjudge on the length that I could make the blade. Got plenty of room, which is great, but I could have got another tickle out of the overall length, which generally you try to get as much length as you can on your blade. But there is nothing wrong with how that's going to look in relation to the liner. So I'm not terribly upset about that. That's just noted down. I could get a little more out of that if I do another one of these. Okay, of course, back spring's hanging way down because we've done nothing with our Tang area. Oh yes, and I did go ahead and put in the sharpening choil piece. So, how am I going to go about the Tang area without even attempting to use a pattern of any sort? Well, I do know that the back spring is going to be approximately here. So there is that mark. And I'm just going to come in a tickle right there. Go ahead and take this off the liner, because I know the back spring I'm going to want approximately that much right there. So, and as you can see, I'm totally ignoring what square is, because square is going to happen whenever I set this up to my back spring with a rupel gauge. The square orientation is dictated, in my opinion, on if you have a flat walk or if you angle your walk. If you have too steep of an angle on your walk, you're going to have a cottywampus looking back square, tang, how you want to say that, to keep your half stop straight up and down. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the blade cocked outwards if you have this 100% square to the blade, which that is the general rule of thumb. So for that to happen, I'm going to need my walk to be fairly flat and not with a huge angle. And there's reasons for each one, and quite honestly, I'm not smart enough to talk much about that. I just know it happens sometimes. Got the Tang roughed in. So let's throw this on the liner real quick and see what we're looking like. Okay, of course the way it's set up right now throws the tip way up, which that's fine. Of course we're overly long, but we still have plenty of back spring hanging down. So all this is going to be getting shaped during the setup process. But that just got a lot of excess material taken off for heat treat and so on and so forth. So, with that being said, actually, let's take a look here. We are really close. We actually are a smidge narrower. Well, I just threw that hole in there, which is fine. So we're going to be taking a little bit of material off the spine of these liners, which will actually, it won't be centered, but it will help bring the pivot hole down just a tickle. Tiny touch. Make it look a little better. Okay. Instead of having a little excess on our back spring, let's see what that'll look like. Okay, no, because that would be well in. I don't want the back spring to be in to where my Tang squirt is hanging off. So I'm going to come out here, scribe that, because I can take a healthy 1/8 or 3/16 off right there. And now, where should our center hole be? Okay, centered would be approximately here, but we want to come over just a wee bit. So we'll come over to right in here. Will be where we. Okay, I've got the length trimmed up, and I got my center hole in the back spring. So we'll go ahead and take a quick glance at where we're at here. There we go. Of course, all this is going to be trimmed more. Of course, I'm cutting it tight. But like I mentioned, I do not want this to be in compared to my Tang squirt right there. So, this is all I'm going to be doing for this evening. The only other thing I need to do before heat treat is to put a nail nick in or a long pull. If you want, I appreciate the input on whether I do a spear point or the clip point. So once again, comment down below, do you want to see just a regular nail nick, or do you want to see me put in a long pull, which is the long straight line that your thumbnail catches on compared to a traditional looking nail nick. Anyhow, because it'll be probably at least a couple or so days till I can get to that. So there'll be plenty of time for y'all to voice your opinion down in the comments. For everyone that's following along on this build, I do thank you. And until the next video, y'all take care.